It's a great blessing to be with all of you today. Now, I have a chance to speak with groups. I always try to have two goals. One of those goals is to say at least one thing that will help you professionally, and at least one thing that will help you personally. So I'm going to endeavor to try to do that today. But before we get into the meat of the subject, I just want to ask you a question. It's a very personal question. Why are you here? Why are you here? I came face to face with that question a number of years ago when I made my first mission trip to the Dominican Republic. Now, I had never been to within thousands of miles of the Dominican Republic. I grew up on a poor little tobacco farm in eastern North Carolina, and I just never been anywhere close to that. But we were down there with a group of people from Winston-Salem, our church, and we worked in a little small community that was very impoverished. But we stayed in Santo Domingo. If you've ever been to Santo Domingo, it's a city of about 2 million people. So one night we went out to dinner and we stopped by a little ice cream shop. And we were just sitting there having ice cream. And I noticed a Dominican lady sitting over a ways, looking over at our table. And after a while, she got up and walked right over to our table, walked right over to me, and said, "Aren't you Kelly King?" And after I about dropped my teeth, I said, "Well, yeah, but how in the world do you know me?" She said, "Well, several years ago, I was a banker, and I went to New Orleans for a banking conference, and you were the keynote speaker, and I just wanted to tell you I thought you did a good job." I said, "Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that." About that time, her husband came over and said, "Hey, I'm Jose. Where are y'all from?" We said, "We're from Winston-Salem, North Carolina." He said, "No kidding. Do you know Joe Budd?" Some of you may know Joe Budd. Joe Budd's a successful businessman in Winston-Salem. We said, "Sure, we know Joe, but how do you know Joe?" He said, "Well, I went to Highport University and Joe was my roommate." About that time, his wife, who had recognized me, said, "Well, what are y'all doing here?" We said, "Well, we're working in the community, and one of the things we've been working on is a children's clinic. And one of our celebrations this trip is to recognize Joe Budd's first wife, Mary, who had recently passed away. We wanted to memorialize her in naming that clinic." And we told them all about that. And about that time, the lady said, "Well, you know what? My father is the leading pediatrician in the city of Santo Domingo." 24 hours later, the leading pediatrician in Santo Domingo, a city of 2 million people, is out ministering to the kids in this poor little area for the Joe Budd, Mary Budd Children's Clinic. Now you think about that. Several years before, several thousand miles away, I speak at an event. I still remember the event because I was supposed to fly over one afternoon. I spoke the next morning at 9 o'clock. It was storming. We couldn't make it. I didn't want to give up on it, so the pilots were able to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. We flew and got there just in time for the speech, gave the speech. Years later, thousands of miles later, I'm in Santo Domingo. She happened to be at the speech. She happened to recognize me. Her husband knew Joe, but you think that's just coincidence? I was there for a purpose. Very different from what I thought. I believe every one of us has a unique God-given purpose every single day. And it's your purpose. And it's powerful. And it's important. And so I want you to think about, as I speak, why are you here? So one of the main reasons I believe you are here is because you are a leader. You were either asked to come by someone that you work with, you read about it, saw about it, had friends that have been. But I believe in large part you're here because you are a leader. And I got to tell you, I think we're at a great place in our world today where leadership is more needed than ever before. So I want to share with you 3 characteristics of outstanding leaders that I've learned over the years. And this is after reading hundreds of leadership books, like you probably have too. When I get through reading all those leadership books, I walk away saying, well, I still don't know how to be a good leader. So I sat down one day and I wrote on a sheet of paper and I said, what do I think is a great leader? The first characteristic of a great leader is They are very clear about the reality they face. They don't sugarcoat it. They don't look through red-colored glasses. They just say, this is the truth. And from that, they have the second characteristic, and that is they are able to construct a vision. They see clearly what can be done to make it better. And the third is they have the courage to act on it. And I believe that is where we are today. I believe our country, our world is facing leadership challenges like we have never faced before. I want to just share with you briefly what my observation is about the reality we face. And it's not a pretty picture. You know, we have experienced for the last 3 years a global pandemic of historic, terrible proportions. We have global economic challenges. We have global geopolitical risk, not the least of which is Russia and Ukraine. We have great social divide and social issues that are much in need of improvement. We have bickering politically like I have never experienced in my life. We're not trying to fix the problems, we're fighting about it. We're fighting each other. We all these problems out there that need to be solved, and we don't seem to be coming together as a leadership group. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take the leaders of this world, the leaders of this community, and I believe especially the Christian leaders of this world, to come together, to forward solutions, to make sure people understand the reality, lay out a clear vision of where we need to go, and have the courage to go there. I want to be fair about the reality we face today, because there are some good and there's some bad. We've certainly made some improvement in some areas. I saw a statistic a couple of days ago where the poverty rate for young children has gone down over the last 10 years, and that's good. Let's continue to work on that. That's a huge problem. We've made some progress with regard to housing, affordable housing, and yet we still have huge, huge problems. We still need about 35,000 affordable housing units in Charlotte today. We have a huge issue, and this is the mega issue that bothers me, frankly, personally, more than anything else, other than spiritual decline. And that is that our public school systems are not able to produce the quality of instruction that we need for our kids. And this is not a criticism of the teachers. It is not a criticism of the school administrators. It is a criticism of because the system has failed. And here's what I base that on. Today, based on national numbers, you hear some local numbers that are a little different because everybody has their own little scorecard. But these are pretty dependable national numbers. 2/3 of the kids in the 3rd and 4th grade cannot read. They say technically proficiently, but they can't read. And you think about that. 2/3 cannot read. If I told you 2/3 could read and 1/3 couldn't read, you'd say, that's really awful. I'm telling you 2/3 cannot read. And they can't do simple math. And so the question before us is, what are they going to be able to do? What kind of life can you look forward to in the world that we live in today when you can't read and you can't do simple math? When I grew up on a tobacco farm, a cotton farm, way, way, way back, you know, if you could pick cotton and you could find tobacco, you could make a little living. Most of those jobs are gone today. And so it's a hopeless situation. And so we look out there today and we see people that are facing a very sad future. And we must do something about that. You know what's interesting to me? We started out as a country 246 years ago with the greatest purpose, the greatest mission, the greatest ideal ever read about. This notion that our founding forefathers, based on faith, declared in the Declaration of Independence that everyone has the inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, I got to tell you, if you can't read and you can't do simple math, I don't think you have a hope for that. So we're not delivering on the promise. But in the last 50, 60 years, we have really, really deteriorated. We're not offering the promise. And so what is that turning into in the world that we live in today? It's turning into the second mega problem that we have today, and that is the rate of and the level of unhappiness in this country and in the world has been increasing dramatically, especially the last 10 years and especially the last 3 years. People are distraught, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're thinking about suicide. I saw a study just a few weeks ago that said that 60%, and these were adults of all ages, 60% said that in the previous week they had experienced strong feelings of anxiety, depression, and suicide. And I've seen that validated in many other studies. And I can just about bet you that there are people in the stadium today. There are people in your family. There are people where you work. There are people today that are struggling. And they're not going to walk right up to you and probably say, hey, I'm struggling, I'm having a hard day, I'm depressed. But people just don't do that. But deep down inside, they're hurting. And so there is a need to help people learn how to read and do math and be able to prepare for the economic future. But there's a bigger need to help people figure out a sense of hope. Is that eternal hope that we know as Christians that we get? That's the only real answer. And so I believe this is a time in world history like we have never faced. None of us truly face it. But this is a wonderful opportunity. This is a call to action. I personally believe God is calling us. Get involved. Get committed. Don't just look at me and see all those problems and say, somebody ought to get out there. Don't just read about it and say, I'll chalk into that next week. What should we do as Christian business leaders? We should do what Joshua did. We should do what Nehemiah did. They didn't just sit around and see okay, somebody else was committed their lives to making it happen. This is a call to action for me and for all of you. Every one of us as a Christian has in our hand the opportunity to share that with others. This could be a moment in world history, and I personally believe it is, when there is a sea change. So we have this enormous opportunity, and I want to just leave you with a challenge to think about. Do you agree with that? If you disagree with it, then just dismiss it and go on and live your life. But if you're a Christian, and I suspect you are all this while you're here, I don't think you're going to be able to dismiss this. I couldn't. Over the last few months, it has really been heavy on my heart to do all I can do to try to improve this. I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to try to pray and find out. And by the way, one of the things I've learned over the years is I don't have to know. You know, some people ask me, you know, when I retired 6 months ago, they said, what are you going to do when you retire? And I said, I don't know, but I know, and it's going to be good. And so, all forward, thinking about the long-term spiritual growth of our world, of our country, of our community, I also want to leave you with something that you can think about personally for you and your family and for the community that you can do starting today. And I want you to walk away today with some things that you can do and you can share with others that will help them be more effective and will help them be happier themselves. So I sat down about a year and a half ago. When I was still at the bank, I was doing, like you all probably were, I was doing a lot of Zoom meetings. 10 or 12 a day. And I saw so many of our teammates, and invariably in the course of a 30, 45-minute discussion, one or more times someone would say, I can't wait for this pandemic to get over so I can be happy again. And I got to thinking about that. That is not a good way to live life. It's just not a good way to live life. Because none of us can change yesterday, and none of us has tomorrow promised. This is it. The genius of life is to realize that life exists right here today and to own your life. And so I sat down and I penciled out 4 steps to happiness that I believe will actually make you happier and will make people around you happier. And if you do nothing but that, you will make the world better. The first step, trying to be happier and to help others be happier, choose happy. Most people believe that their happiness is a function of what goes on around them. So this bad thing happened, pandemic happened, I can't be happy. I didn't get the promotion. My friend didn't like the clothes I wear today. I will be unhappy today. Life happens. And we respond, we become the victim. That's not what we should do. We should choose to own our own lives. And as Christians, we own that life, that choice of life with our Creator. We know that we have an important purpose in life. And we know that with the help of God and Jesus Christ, we can in fact control our life here on this earth. And so I tell people, here's a good way to think about it. When you get up in the morning, as you're getting ready, even before you go out and meet your loved ones, look yourself in the mirror and you say to yourself, you know what? I'm the 100% owner. I'm the chairman. I'm the CEO of this company called me. And I decide today I'm going to be happy. Kind of that simple. Now, there's some steps you have to go through. I'm getting ready to tell you. But the first step is don't be the victim, even though your problems happen to you, even though people have done bad things to you. Don't let them win. Choose to be happy. The second step is to be clear about your purpose in life. Really have to be clear about your purpose in life to ever achieve a sense of happiness and a sense of fulfillment. And as Christians, we know that our purpose in life is very clear. It's very clear in the Bible. It's love God and love your neighbor. There's a lot of text there, but it's all boiled down to love God. So you know what your purpose is. And that gets translated into worldly, secular purposes. But the most important point is to be clear. Most people go through their lives and they never really think about, and they never get to be really clear about, why am I here on this earth? What is my purpose? Why are you here? Am I just here just to pass 80 years, 90 years, 100 years? Is that all there is to it? I don't think so. So you have a unique God-given purpose. Find it and get focused on it. One of my 5 great books is a book called Man's Search for Meaning, written by Viktor Frankl. He survived the Holocaust, spent 3 years in Auschwitz, lost his entire family. A lot of really good wisdom in that book. And he said, if you know your why, you can endure any how. Said another way, if you're clear about your purpose in life, you can figure out how to overcome the problems. That's really, really important. Because if you think about it, if you get up in the morning and you don't know what your purpose in life is, then most any obstacle can knock you over. Because you don't know what you're trying to do anyway. You get up in that morning with no purpose and you feel great and everything's wonderful, that might be a good day. But if you get up in the morning and you're going to encounter some type of problem and you don't have clarity of purpose, you can easily fall into the trap of being a victim. It's just going to be a really, really bad day. I've used a simple little analogy. A young parent that has a 2-year-old child. If you get up one morning, that 2-year-old child comes into your bedroom crying, hungry, needs attention, and you're laying there and you've got the flu, what are you going to do? You're going to say, little Johnny, little Susie, hey, Dad's got a cold, Dad's got the flu, I'm going to be in bed for 2 or 3 days, you're on your own. Is that what you're going to do? No. What are you going to do? You're going to crawl out of bed, you're going to blow your nose, and you're going to get in there and take care of your kid. Why? Because that's an important part of the purpose of your life. And you will pass through the challenges and the difficulties and the obstacles of all you have to go through all that day, and the next day, and the next day, to make sure you accomplish your purpose. And that's the way life is. When you're clear about your purpose in life, you figure out how to overcome the obstacles. Really important. The third step in being happy in difficult times is to have a growth mindset. If you choose to have a fixed mindset, you're a person who believes that you cannot learn, you cannot grow, you cannot achieve, and when problems come along, you become the victim. Well, this is a problem, this is an obstacle, this is a wall I've got to climb, but I'm not capable, I'm stuck, I'm not capable of learning and growing, so I just give up. People that have a growth mindset are people that believe I can learn, I can change, I can grow, I can overcome. It's like the difference between an optimist and a pessimist. A pessimist is a person, when a problem comes along, they look at it and they say, this problem has happened, it's going to ruin my whole life, it's going to last forever, and it's all my fault. An optimist facing the same problem says, this problem happened, it's not going to ruin my whole life, this problem's not going to last that long, it's not my fault anyway, I got to deal with it, but I can deal with it. So having that growth mindset, believe in yourself. And by the way, you are dramatically more capable than you believe you are. Your brain capacity is incredible. Your brain has 100 billion neurons. You are smart as a whip. You can do anything you want to do. And don't ever let people tell you, you can't do this or you can't do that. Don't you tell yourself, I'm limited, I can't do this because somebody said she can't do this or he can't do this. Don't you listen to that. God Almighty is the one that tells you what you can do. And Paul says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. There is no limit around that. All things. And so the final step in being happy, and this is really, really powerful, is to help others. Help others. Well, that sounds fine, but I can't really help people. I don't have the time and I don't have the money. Well, look, helping people in the way they need help really doesn't take much time and it almost never takes any money. You know what people need? They need a little pat on the back. They need a little smile. They need a little hey, how are you? And wait for the answer. They need a little prayer. They need the things that you can do for them, especially as Christians. And so I encourage people to go out and do everything you can to do the little things for people around you, because I could say again, based on studies, the odds are really high that people all around you, and don't discount your own family members, your children, your spouse, people all around you need help today. People are really struggling. They're frustrated. They're depressed. See the suicide rates going up. Don't miss the opportunity to help those people. Many years ago, there was a true story of an elderly Chinese man who had been blind his whole life. And somehow he heard about a medical mission clinic up on a hill a long way away, and he made his way to that clinic. Big tent, he went in. They did a simple surgery, it turns out, and it completely restored his sight. It was a wonderful thing. He got up off the operating table, immediately left, didn't say a word to anybody, and was gone for hours. The doctors and the nurses were a little depressed, pardon me, because they thought he would hang around and, thank them and so forth. He didn't say a word, he just left. He was gone for several hours, and then they looked down the hill. Coming up the hill was this elderly gentleman with a long rope. Holding on to the rope behind him was about 20 elderly men and women that were also blind, and he was leading them to the tent so they could have their eyes restored as well. If you were blind today and you immediately had your sight restored and you knew 10 people that were blind, wouldn't you go try to tell them, look, you can go to this clinic here on Providence Road, you can go right there, and you'd be determined to do that, wouldn't you? Well, if you know that you have the gift of eternal life and people don't have it, don't you think you ought to tell them? So what would you do if you had that kind of gift? And because I know that you do have that kind of gift, what will you do? And so finally, I'll leave you with a challenge that I've left with many people over the last few years in helping others. And that is to sow what I call seeds of hope. So I believe all of these little things we do, pats on the back, smiles, how are you, prayer, all of these things we do for people make a really, really big difference in their lives. And you have the opportunity to do it every day. So when you get up in the morning, even before you go out and see your loved ones, you accept this challenge. And I ask you to actually try this in the next couple of days. You accept this challenge. Someone hands you a handful of invisible seeds. These are seeds of hope. And every time you go out and do a little something nice, just a little smile, in your mind you take one of those little seeds, you toss it down on the ground, you just planted a seed of hope. And if you'll do that throughout your life, you won't get it perfect every day, nobody does, but do it as best you can. As your life draws close to an end, I believe you'll be one of the lucky few who can look back and say, I didn't get it perfect, but I did my best to help as many people as I could. You'll look back over your life and you'll see the result of all those seeds you planted. Some of those seeds will be flowers, some of those seeds will be oak trees, some of those seeds will be that little boy down the street that couldn't read, and you went down on Saturday morning and helped tutor him in terms of how to read. You'll see that family in the pandemic that didn't have any food. You took some spare money and took them a couple of bags of groceries. You'll see that family member who was struggling through a divorce. You took the extra time to help them pray and get through that challenging period of their life. You'll see all those things that you were able to help with those little bitty things. And you will know that you helped change the world. One person, one smile, one life at a time. There was a young man in California, San Francisco, several years ago, who left his apartment, walked several miles to the Golden Gate Bridge, walked to the bridge, climbed to the top, jumped off to his immediate death. That afternoon in his apartment, they found a note, and the note said, "I'm going to walk to the bridge. If one person smiles at me, I won't jump." One person, one smile, one life. But then there's another young man named Kevin Hines. You can look him up on the internet. He also walked to the bridge, climbed to the top, jumped off, and survived. Now, to show you the magnitude of that, when you jump off the top of the Empire State Building, it's like jumping off the top of a 28-story building. When your body hits the water, basically every bone in your body is crushed. He survived because a sea lion came up and kept him afloat until the Coast Guard got there. Now, I believe Kevin Hines has an important purpose, and he does too. He's written a book and he talks about it all around the world. So every one of us, every day, can save a life, physically and spiritually. And my hope and prayer for all of you is don't worry about what you missed yesterday. Don't wait for tomorrow. This is your day. God has placed in you His trust to make the world better. God bless you all. Thank you.